Good morning, it's Zubair Seema here from Mint Invest. So how did I acquire $4.2 million in property within 5 years before the age of 35? I just wanted to make this quick video and tell you a little bit about how I did that, so then hopefully you guys can apply the same principles and do that too. So just for a little bit of background about myself, I'm a civil engineer by trade. I studied that at the University of Auckland, and so being an engineer, looking at infrastructure projects which I worked on in New Zealand, the UK and Australia made a lot of sense, and I often noticed that with these major infrastructure projects, wherever the government is spending hundreds of millions, if not sometimes billions of dollars in upgrading infrastructure, be that express bus route, a new train line, a new bridge, a new area where they've gone in and created roads to access areas that were previously just farmland. Often people and jobs follow those projects, and I've made quite a bit of equity from properties that I bought in Sydney and other parts of Australia by following that. So basically I bought into areas that were up and coming, whereby they were previously hard to get to, taking over an hour in the car to get from Sydney CBD. And then with a new express bus route, one of the areas that I bought into, it shortened the commute time down to under 45 minutes. And the express bus route had limited stops. So that was one major thing. And another thing that I did was, being an engineer, obviously data is very important to me in terms of minimizing risk and knowing that, if you're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and taking out a loan to buy a property in a certain area, or if you're going to spend $1 million on a certain property, that you've minimized your risk and exposure. Because what if that property doesn't go up in value? So what I did there was I made extraneous, highly detailed spreadsheets that look at all the data that I could find on the internet, publicly available, of course. And I look into things such as the growth rates, not just for the last 12 months, but going back to the last 3 years, the last 5 years, the last 10 years, to see how consistent a particular area was. I also looked into the vacancy rates within an area to make sure that there was a high demand for renters. Typically, we're looking for areas where the vacancy rate is under 3%. I also looked into the Australian Bureau of Statistics, which is a great resource. It's free, it's publicly available, it gets updated every few years, so it's not the most up to date. But what's interesting about that resource is you can see what is the sort of typical household within the area. Is it single people? Is it a couple without children? Is it a couple with a couple of children? Is it a couple with maturing children? And you can see how many households spend more than 30% of their average household income on either rent or mortgages. And what you want to target is areas where there's very few households that spend more than 30% of their income on that living cost. That's crucial. And the other data points that you look at is obviously how much money you're paying to get into that property, and then ultimately how much money are you going to have to spend each week to hold that property. So after your mortgage, your council rates, your water rates, management fees, strata, if it's applicable, what will the cash flow position be at the end of that? And what's crucial to that is you also need to partner and work with a very savvy accountant who understands investment property and also understands how to maximize your available tax incentives, be that depreciation, and also, if you are slightly negative geared, how to, from a holistic cash flow perspective, balance that out. So what I mean by that is you might have your salaried income, and then out of that income you're paying tax, and then what's left you've got to live off, which is your disposable cash. And then once you apply tax incentives and depreciation and any tax write-offs such as negative gearing that you're claiming, what is your basically out-of-pocket or in-pocket figure at the end of each week? So if you are going to get money back from the tax office through property, then obviously that money can go towards either paying down your mortgages faster, or it's going to go towards a little kitty that you can save money to help you buy your next investment property. So if it wasn't for working with good accountants, for me, I wouldn't have claimed the depreciation on one of my properties that would go for the next 30 years, which has given me more free cash, which I can then use to get more loans to to buy more properties. And the other thing, another big part of this is obviously having the right mortgage brokers on board, because they can make or break a property deal. And you have to understand this: when you go to a bank to get a loan to buy an investment property, banks constantly change their policy over the years. Everyone remembers the 2018-2019 market, where it was largely affected by the Royal Commission, and banks massively pulled back on investor lending. So it's constantly fluctuating. But what you've got to consider is that when you're going to get loans, the banks are there to protect their risk, and the valuers are there to protect their jobs, and hence why when you get a loan for a property and a valuer comes out and looks at the property, sometimes, especially if it's a new build or if it's in an up-and-coming area where there's not a heck of a lot of sales data, the valuers might value the property short. I've had this happen to me. I had one of my properties, which I absolutely do not regret buying, valued 50 grand less than what I signed the contract for. And keep in mind, I signed that contract under auction conditions, so there was no way of backing out of that deal. If I had backed out of that deal, I would have lost 10%, which at the time was $1 million purchase, so it would have been 100 grand gone. And that was through St. George Bank. So I rang my broker and I said, you've got to get some other banks out there with different valuers ASAP. And in the end, we actually had NAB come to the party with a valuation on contract price. So we paid $1.05 million for that unit in 2017. And at the end of 2021, comparables in the area without an ocean view were selling for 1.5 to 1.7 million. So that property is easily worth 1.5 to 1.6. The market's probably come off a little bit, but it's in an area where there is no more land to build. There's coastal views. So I think that was definitely a savvy investment purchase, and I've managed to pull 200 grand out of that property to buy another one. So you can see there that despite the bank valuation coming in short, we went and looked for another lender, and we found a solution. So anyway, this video has ended up being longer than I expected, but the key things there is obviously look at the research, look at the fundamentals, take a deep dive into the numbers, work with good professionals, which include a very savvy and experienced accountant who knows his way around the Australian tax legislation and how it relates to property, and then of course working with a very experienced and solution-focused mortgage broker. So with that, I'm going to end the video. If there's any more questions, would love to hear them. Please send us a comment or drop us a line. We're at info@mintinvest.com.au. I'm Zaver Seema, the founder of Mint Invest. We started the company in 2018. And I encourage everyone to get into property as early as they can, because it's time in the market, not time in the market. And I've got my little girl here, Aaliyah, who's listening in, and I'm going to get her started as soon as she's old enough to open up a bank account. Thank you.